From the dawn of human civilization, the question of the universe's origin has been an endless source of fascination and inquiry. Ancient cultures developed creation myths, religious traditions offered divine explanations, and modern science continues to probe the cosmos for empirical answers. The vastness of the universe, the intricate laws governing it, and the sheer mystery of its existence compel us to ask, where did it all begin? Philosophers and scientists alike have struggled to provide definitive answers. Some propose that the universe emerged from a singularity, leading to the Big Bang. Others speculate about an eternal, cyclical cosmos, ever expanding and contracting in an infinite loop. Despite these theories, no single explanation satisfies every perspective, and each answer raises further questions. In this context, one might wonder, what was the Buddha's stance on this great mystery? Did he offer a cosmogony? Did he deny the existence of a creator? Unlike many religious figures who provided creation myths or divine origins, the Buddha approached the question differently. His teachings did not focus on theorizing about beginnings and endings, but instead emphasized the nature of human suffering and the path to its cessation. While many associate Buddhism primarily with meditation and mindfulness, the Buddha's insights extend far beyond personal well-being. They encompass profound views on existence, perception, and the illusion of permanence. He taught that the universe and the self are intimately tied to the process of becoming, bhava, a cycle of continuous change driven by craving and attachment. His perspective was not about proving or disproving the universe's origins, but rather about shifting one's understanding towards liberation from suffering. This approach challenges us to reconsider our questions. Instead of asking, where did the universe come from, the Buddha urges us to inquire, what is the nature of suffering, and how can it be transcended? In this exploration, we will delve into the Buddha's teachings regarding the nature of the cosmos, our place in it, and the ultimate goal of enlightenment. By shifting focus from speculative debates to practical wisdom, we can uncover a profound understanding of existence, one that offers not just answers, but a transformative path to inner peace and liberation. The debate between naturalism and supernaturalism has existed for centuries, influencing religious traditions, philosophical thought, and scientific progress. While some worldviews emphasize a purely material reality governed by observable laws, others argue for the existence of unseen forces, deities, and realms beyond human perception. This divide is also present in discussions surrounding Buddhism, as some interpret the Buddha's teachings through a secular, psychological lens, while others embrace the traditional cosmological aspects of rebirth, karma, and divine beings. Throughout Buddhist history, different schools of thought have emphasized either a naturalist or supernaturalist interpretation of the Buddha's teachings. These two perspectives shape how individuals understand key concepts such as rebirth, karma, enlightenment, and the nature of the cosmos. Naturalist, secular, interpretation. Some modern Buddhists, particularly in the West, focus on Buddhism as a philosophy or psychology rather than a religion. They interpret concepts like karma and rebirth metaphorically, viewing them as psychological principles rather than literal realities. Figures such as Stephen Batchelor advocate for a Buddhism without beliefs, emphasizing the Buddha's teachings on ethics, mindfulness, and meditation while downplaying supernatural elements. Secular Buddhists argue that the Four Noble Truths and the Eightfold Path provide practical tools for understanding suffering, independent of beliefs in gods, heavens, or rebirth. Supernaturalist, traditional, interpretation. Classical Buddhist texts describe multiple realms of existence, celestial beings, devas, hellish dimensions, and cycles of rebirth, indicating that the Buddha acknowledged a supernatural structure to the cosmos. Traditional schools of Buddhism, including Theravada, Mahayana, and Vajrayana accept the existence of unseen realms and the literal mechanism of karma shaping one's future lives. Many Buddhist practitioners engage in rituals, prayers, and offerings to deities, bodhisattvas, and spirits, believing that these beings can offer guidance, blessings, and protection. Interestingly, the Buddha did not explicitly side with either the materialist or supernaturalist view. Instead, he took a pragmatic approach, focusing on what leads to liberation from suffering rather than engaging in metaphysical speculation. In several discourses, the Buddha emphasized that belief in supernatural elements such as rebirth and karma could be beneficial if it encouraged ethical behavior and spiritual progress. However, he also warned against blind faith, urging individuals to rely on direct experience and wisdom rather than dogma. In the Kalama Sutta, in 3.65, the Buddha advised the Kalama people, "Do not go upon what has been acquired by repeated hearing, nor upon tradition, nor upon rumor, nor upon scripture, but when you know for yourselves, these things are wholesome, these things are blameless, these things are praised by the wise, then enter and abide in them." This teaching suggests that the Buddha prioritized direct experience and ethical practice over doctrinal adherence to supernatural claims. In traditional Buddhism, faith plays an essential role in practice. Many teachings encourage belief in rebirth, celestial realms, and past life karma as part of a broader understanding of existence. In secular Buddhism, inquiry and skepticism are more emphasized, with practitioners focusing on what can be empirically verified through meditation and mindfulness. The Buddha's middle way approach suggests that one can hold supernatural beliefs provisionally without making them the foundation of one's practice. Instead, he urged his followers to test spiritual principles through personal experience. This natural versus supernatural debate remains relevant today, especially with the increasing influence of science and secular thought on Buddhist practice. Some key points of discussion include neuroscience and meditation. Many scientific studies validate the psychological benefits of meditation, mindfulness, and ethical behavior, supporting Buddhism's naturalist elements. Rebirth and quantum theory. Some modern Buddhist thinkers explore whether scientific concepts like quantum mechanics could align with traditional Buddhist ideas of rebirth and interdependence. The rise of secular mindfulness. Mindfulness-based stress reduction, MBSR, programs have stripped Buddhist teachings of supernatural elements, making them widely accessible but also raising questions about whether this distillation removes essential aspects of the Dharma. The Buddha's teachings offer a middle path between rigid naturalism and blind supernaturalism. Rather than demanding belief in unseen realms or rejecting spiritual perspectives entirely, Buddhism encourages direct experience, ethical practice, and open-minded inquiry. For practitioners today, this debate need not be a source of division. Instead, it can serve as an opportunity for exploration. Whether one approaches Buddhism from a materialist or spiritual perspective, the core teachings on mindfulness, compassion, and wisdom remain universally applicable. Ultimately, the Buddha's guidance remains the same. Does a belief or practice reduce suffering? Does it lead to greater peace and wisdom? If so, then it is worth following, regardless of whether it is classified as natural or supernatural. Unlike other spiritual leaders, the Buddha did not engage in abstract debates about the nature of existence or attempt to establish a definitive cosmology. His teachings were rooted in practicality, always returning to the question of whether a particular belief or viewpoint was beneficial in reducing suffering. The Buddha was not concerned with whether a particular worldview was objectively true in an ultimate sense, but rather whether it led to greater wisdom, compassion, and liberation. His approach was strategic and skillful. Instead of getting caught up in endless debates over supernatural versus natural perspectives, he focused on what was directly observable and useful. For instance, he recognized that some people have experiences of supernatural phenomena, while others do not. Rather than dismissing or validating either side, he emphasized that clinging to any fixed view, whether materialist or supernaturalist, could lead to suffering. In the Agivakagata Sutta, MN 72, the Buddha refused to take a stance on whether the universe is eternal or finite, whether the self exists or does not. He explained that such questions do not lead to enlightenment but instead entangle the mind in speculation. His concern was not what people believed, but how their beliefs influenced their suffering and actions. Similarly, in the Brahmajala Sutta, DN 1, the Buddha analyzed various philosophical worldviews of his time and showed how each was ultimately based on attachment, ignorance, or speculation. He encouraged his followers to go beyond belief systems and instead focus on direct experience and inner transformation. The Buddha's approach allowed him to skillfully engage with people of various backgrounds and beliefs. When speaking to those who held strong supernatural views, he used their existing beliefs to illustrate deeper truths about impermanence, karma, and ethical conduct. When engaging with skeptics, he emphasized observable realities such as suffering and the benefits of ethical and mental discipline. This adaptability made his teachings accessible to a wide range of individuals. He did not ask people to accept doctrines blindly but encouraged them to test and verify his teachings through personal experience, a principle known as apasiko, come and see for yourself. Ultimately, the Buddha's goal was to help individuals transcend all conceptual views and directly experience liberation. He recognized that human beings create worldviews to make sense of their experiences, but these worldviews themselves can become sources of attachment and suffering. Whether one believes in a supernatural order or a purely materialistic world, clinging to any fixed perspective is a barrier to true awakening. Instead of trying to resolve metaphysical debates, the Buddha offered a path that leads beyond them, the Eightfold Path. This practical path of ethical living, mindfulness, and wisdom allows practitioners to cultivate insight into the nature of reality without being bound by rigid ideological frameworks. The Buddha's approach to worldviews was both profound and liberating. He neither fully endorsed nor outright rejected supernatural or materialist perspectives. Instead, he emphasized a path of personal transformation that goes beyond belief systems. By focusing on suffering and its cessation, he offered a framework that allows for flexibility, inclusivity, and deep personal insight. In this way, his teachings remain timeless. Whether one leans towards scientific skepticism or mystical belief, the key to enlightenment lies in understanding the mind, letting go of attachments, and cultivating a direct experience of reality. By freeing ourselves from the need to have absolute answers about the universe, we open the door to true wisdom and peace. One of the Buddha's key insights is the concept of becoming, bhava, a fundamental process through which beings continuously form and reform their identities within different planes of existence. The Buddha taught that becoming arises from craving and attachment, driving the cycle of rebirth and perpetuating suffering. According to Buddhist philosophy, becoming operates on multiple levels. Psychological becoming, on a moment-to-moment basis, we create a sense of self through our desires, thoughts, and emotions. For example, when we identify as a successful person, a failure, a kind individual, or a victim, we reinforce particular identities that shape our experiences. Existential becoming, across lifetimes, the mental formations, sakras, shaped by our past karma influence the realm in which we are reborn, whether in human form, celestial existence, or lower realms. Cosmic becoming, beings are continuously reborn in different realms of existence, whether physical or immaterial, according to their karma. These worlds are not permanent, they arise and dissolve in accordance with the cycle of samsara. The illusion of a permanent self is at the heart of suffering. When we cling to an identity, we inevitably experience frustration and dissatisfaction because all things are impermanent, anicca. The more we attach to an idea of self, whether based on status, possessions, relationships, or personal beliefs, the more suffering we generate. The Buddha provided a path to transcend becoming through wisdom and mindfulness. By observing our attachments and seeing their transient nature, we can break free from the endless cycle of self-creation. Through the Eightfold Path, right view, right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration, we can loosen the grip of craving and move towards ultimate liberation, nibbana. The concept of becoming is deeply intertwined with our daily experiences. Whether we are conscious of it or not, we are constantly shaping and reshaping our sense of self. However, the Buddha's teachings offer a way to go beyond this process. By recognizing the impermanence of all identities and attachments, we can cultivate wisdom and inner freedom. Ultimately, transcending becoming is the key to breaking the cycle of suffering and realizing true liberation. Throughout history, every civilization has developed its own creation myths to explain the origins of the world and humanity. These stories, often tied to religious or cultural beliefs, seek to provide meaning and structure to human existence. Some traditions speak of a divine creator bringing the universe into being, while others describe primordial chaos gradually organizing itself into the cosmos. Unlike many religious traditions that insist on a singular creation event, the Buddha did not teach a fixed or absolute creation story. Instead, his teachings emphasize the impermanence and cyclical nature of existence, where the universe arises and dissolves repeatedly over time. Rather than focusing on an ultimate beginning, he was more concerned with why beings suffer and how they can be liberated from suffering. In multiple discourses, the Buddha refused to directly answer metaphysical questions regarding the beginning of the universe. For example, in the Malunkyaputta Sutta, MN 63, a monk named Malunkyaputta asked the Buddha, "Is the universe eternal or not? Is it infinite or finite? Does a soul exist after death?" The Buddha responded by comparing such speculative inquiries to a man struck by a poisoned arrow, a story covered earlier in this text. He explained that focusing on these questions does not lead to the cessation of suffering, just as someone refusing to remove a poisoned arrow until they learn who shot it would only suffer more. This indicates that the Buddha viewed debates about creation and the universe's origin as distractions from the true purpose of his teachings, liberation from suffering. While the Buddha did not offer a single creation story, he described the universe as undergoing cycles of expansion and contraction in texts like the Aguna Sutta, DN 27. In this discourse, he outlined a cosmogony in which the universe repeatedly dissolves and reforms, influenced by the karma of beings. This aligns with modern scientific theories of a cyclic universe, where cosmic expansion and contraction occur indefinitely. The Buddha explained that beings from higher realms, after exhausting their merit, are reborn into newly forming worlds. Over time, ignorance and craving take root, leading to social divisions, conflict, and suffering. This illustrates how suffering is not merely a human issue but an inherent condition of samsara, the cycle of birth, death, and rebirth. In the Brahmajala Sutta, DN 1, and other texts, the Buddha recounts how certain deities, particularly Brahma, mistakenly believe themselves to be the creators of the universe. According to the story, a powerful deity named Mahabrahma, after being reborn in an empty celestial realm, assumes he is the first being and the creator of all that follows. When other beings are later reborn in his realm due to their karma, he falsely believes that he brought them into existence. This tale serves as a critique of creationist beliefs. The Buddha explains that even gods are subject to delusion and that belief in a single creator arises from misinterpretation of one's own experience. In Buddhist cosmology, deities exist, but they are neither omniscient nor eternal. They too are bound by karma and the cycle of rebirth. The Buddha's teachings do not rely on a specific creation event because his focus was not on explaining the origins of the universe, but on how to transcend suffering. His rejection of definitive creation myths carries several key implications. Impermanence over absolutes. The universe is not seen as having a single beginning or end, but as a constantly changing and evolving phenomenon. Practicality over speculation. Knowing the origins of the universe does not change the reality of suffering. The Buddha emphasized practical wisdom, understanding dukkha, suffering, its causes, and the way to overcome it. Karma over creation. Instead of a creator god determining one's fate, karma, intentional actions, plays the central role in shaping experiences and rebirths. Freedom from dogma. The absence of a fixed creation myth in Buddhism allows for a more flexible, inquiry-based approach to understanding the world. Some modern Buddhists reconcile the Buddha's teachings with scientific theories. The Big Bang Theory, for example, is sometimes seen as aligning with the expansion and contraction cycles described in Buddhist cosmology. While Buddhism does not rely on scientific models, its open-ended approach allows practitioners to harmonize spiritual insights with scientific discoveries. For those who seek metaphysical certainty, the Buddha's refusal to provide definitive answers may seem unsatisfying. However, for those on the path to enlightenment, this approach offers a liberating perspective. The nature of the universe matters far less than how we free ourselves from suffering. The Buddha's teachings challenge us to move beyond speculation about the universe's origins and focus on personal transformation. While myths and theories may satisfy curiosity, they do not lead to enlightenment. By embracing the impermanent, ever-changing nature of reality, we can shift our focus from seeking ultimate answers to cultivating wisdom, ethical living, and mindfulness. In the end, the Buddha's view on creation myths is clear. What matters is not how the universe began, but how we can transcend suffering within it. One of the most fundamental teachings in Buddhism is samsara, the cycle of birth, death, and rebirth. Unlike some religious traditions that posit a singular creation event or a final judgment leading to an eternal afterlife, Buddhism describes existence as an ongoing cycle, shaped by karma, kama, and craving, tanha. The nature of samsara. The concept of samsara portrays life not as a single journey with a definitive beginning or end, but as an endless cycle. Beings continuously transition through different forms of existence, sometimes as humans, sometimes as animals, celestial beings, or even inhabitants of lower realms, depending on their past actions. The cycle continues indefinitely until one attains liberation, nirvana. The Buddha explained that samsara is characterized by dukkha, suffering or unsatisfactoriness, because all conditioned existence is impermanent. As long as beings remain attached to desires, fears, and ignorance, they are bound to the cycle, experiencing birth, aging, sickness, and death over and over again. The 6 realms of rebirth. Buddhism traditionally describes 6 realms within samsara, into which beings may be reborn depending on their karma. The human realm, considered the most favorable realm for attaining enlightenment, as it offers a balance of pleasure and suffering, leading to reflection and spiritual practice. The Deva, heavenly, realm, a realm of great pleasure and longevity, yet still impermanent. Devas eventually exhaust their good karma and fall back into lower realms. The Asura, demigod, realm, beings in this realm are powerful but often consumed by jealousy and conflict, leading to suffering despite their strengths. The animal realm, a state of existence driven by instinct and survival, marked by ignorance and lack of self-awareness, making spiritual progress difficult. The hungry ghost, Preta, realm, beings here are tormented by unfulfilled desires, symbolizing the consequences of greed and attachment in past lives. The hell realm, the realm of extreme suffering, believed to be the result of severe negative karma. However, it is not eternal, and beings can eventually move to other realms once their karma is exhausted. What determines rebirth? The Buddha taught that karma, the ethical consequences of one's actions, determines where a being is reborn. Unlike deterministic fate, karma operates through intentional actions, shaping one's future experiences. Wholesome actions, generosity, kindness, wisdom, lead to favorable rebirths in the human or celestial realms. Unwholesome actions, hatred, greed, delusion, result in rebirth in the lower realms of animals, hungry ghosts, or hell beings. Karma is not a system of divine punishment but a natural law of cause and effect. Each action, whether good or bad, sets into motion a series of consequences, influencing future experiences. Escaping samsara, the path to liberation. While samsara is vast and seemingly endless, the Buddha provided a path to break free from the cycle, the Noble Eightfold Path. This path consists of right view, understanding the Four Noble Truths and the reality of impermanence. Right intention, cultivating thoughts of renunciation, goodwill, and compassion. Right speech, speaking truthfully and avoiding harmful words. Right action, engaging in ethical conduct by abstaining from killing, stealing, and misconduct. Right livelihood, earning a living in a way that does not harm others. Right effort, cultivating positive states of mind and abandoning negative ones. Right mindfulness, developing awareness of the body, feelings, mind, and phenomena. Right concentration, practicing meditation to develop deep states of mental clarity and insight. Through dedicated practice of these principles, one can gradually weaken the forces of craving and ignorance, leading to the cessation of suffering and the attainment of nirvana, the state beyond birth and death. While traditional Buddhist cosmology describes literal rebirth into different realms, some modern interpretations view rebirth as a psychological process, where patterns of thought, behavior, and emotions continue moment by moment. In this sense, every action and decision we make shapes who we become, reinforcing habitual cycles of suffering or leading toward greater freedom and wisdom. Regardless of whether one takes a literal or symbolic view of rebirth, the essential lesson remains the same. We are responsible for our actions, and by cultivating wisdom and compassion, we can break free from suffering. The concept of rebirth is not just about what happens after death, it is a profound reminder of impermanence and personal responsibility. Every moment offers an opportunity for transformation. By understanding samsara and the law of karma, we gain insight into how our choices shape our experiences. More importantly, we realize that liberation is possible. The Buddha's teachings are a guide, not only to understanding the nature of existence, but to transcending it entirely. Through ethical living, mindfulness, and wisdom, we can free ourselves from suffering, break the cycle of rebirth, and experience the ultimate peace of nirvana. The Buddha often used parables and similes to illustrate profound truths in ways that people could easily grasp. His teachings were not abstract philosophical musings but practical insights meant to guide individuals toward wisdom and liberation. Below are some powerful stories that highlight his perspective on the nature of existence, perception, and suffering. 1. The Blind Man and the Elephant. A famous parable in Buddhist tradition describes a group of blind men who encounter an elephant for the first time. Each one touches a different part of the elephant and describes it according to their limited experience. One feels the trunk and claims the elephant is like a snake, another touches the leg and believes it to be a tree, while another feels the ear and asserts it is like a fan. Another, touching the tail, declares the elephant to be like a rope, while another feeling its side insists it is like a wall. The men begin to argue fiercely, each convinced that his perception is the correct one. They are all partially right, but none of them can see the full reality of the elephant. This parable illustrates a fundamental truth: our perceptions are limited and often shaped by our own experiences and biases. People cling to their views without seeing the whole picture, leading to endless debates and conflicts. In many ways, this story mirrors the human condition. Different cultures, philosophies, and religions often perceive only fragments of the larger truth and argue over their perspectives. The Buddha taught that instead of becoming attached to partial truths, we should cultivate wisdom by seeing reality from multiple perspectives. He emphasized the importance of humility, open-mindedness, and recognizing the limitations of our own understanding. This parable is particularly relevant in today's world, where differing worldviews often lead to division. Whether in religious, political, or personal discussions, people tend to cling to their perspectives while dismissing others. The Buddha's teaching through this story reminds us that wisdom comes not from rigid certainty, but from recognizing the complexity of truth and being open to learning. Furthermore, this story underscores the Buddha's approach to philosophical and metaphysical debates. Rather than engaging in disputes over who holds the absolute truth, he encouraged direct experience and practical application of knowledge. Instead of blindly clinging to beliefs, he taught that true insight arises from seeing beyond our limited viewpoints and cultivating awareness. In the context of understanding the universe, this parable suggests that no single perspective, be it scientific, religious, or philosophical, can fully encapsulate reality. Instead of debating the ultimate nature of the cosmos, the Buddha urged us to focus on what truly matters: how we engage with our own minds and actions to reduce suffering and attain enlightenment. 2. The parable of the poison arrow. One of the most powerful parables in Buddhist teachings is the poison arrow parable, which the Buddha used to illustrate the futility of metaphysical speculation and the importance of direct practice toward enlightenment. The story goes as follows: a man is struck by a poison arrow, and his family rushes to bring a doctor to remove it. However, instead of allowing immediate treatment, the man insists on first knowing who shot the arrow, what kind of bow was used, what materials made up the arrowhead, and even details about the archer's background. As he delays treatment, his condition worsens, and he eventually dies from the poison. The Buddha used this parable to emphasize a crucial point: speculating about metaphysical questions, such as the origins of the universe, whether the soul exists, or whether the cosmos is infinite, is ultimately unhelpful in alleviating suffering. Just as the poisoned man should prioritize having the arrow removed rather than debating unnecessary details, practitioners should focus on the immediate problem, escaping the cycle of suffering, samsara. Practical wisdom over speculation. The Buddha discouraged useless speculation on topics that do not contribute to enlightenment. He often refused to engage in abstract debates about the universe's origin or what happens after death, instead focusing on how individuals could free themselves from suffering in this very life. The urgency of practice. Just as the poisoned man had little time to waste, the Buddha reminded his followers that life is short. Rather than getting caught in intellectual debates, one should dedicate time to meditation, ethical living, and the development of wisdom. The middle path. This parable also exemplifies the Buddha's practical approach to knowledge. He neither encouraged blind faith nor excessive skepticism, but rather a balanced, experiential understanding. what can be directly known and verified through insight and practice. This parable remains profoundly relevant today. In modern times, people engage in endless debates about the meaning of life, the existence of a creator, and the afterlife, often without applying insights to their own well-being. The Buddha's message through this story is clear: focus on what leads to liberation, rather than wasting time on abstract, unprovable ideas. In essence, the parable of the poisoned arrow reminds us that the ultimate goal of Buddhist practice is to transcend suffering through direct experience, rather than intellectual speculation. By prioritizing mindfulness, ethical conduct, and meditative insight, one can remove the poisoned arrow of ignorance and delusion, leading to true peace and freedom. 3. The Burning House Parable. The Burning House Parable, found in the Lotus Sutra, is one of the most well-known allegories illustrating the nature of human suffering and the Buddha's skillful means to guide beings toward liberation. The story describes a wealthy man whose house has caught fire. Inside, his children are playing, completely unaware of the danger surrounding them. The father urgently calls them to leave the burning house, but they are too absorbed in their games to pay attention. Knowing that they will not come out willingly, he devises a clever way to save them. He promises them wonderful carts outside, each suited to their interests. Excited by this prospect, the children rush out, escaping the flames. Once outside, they find not the promised carts, but something even greater. The father has provided them with magnificent, jewel-encrusted chariots beyond their imagination. The burning house represents samsara. The fire symbolizes the suffering, impermanence, and delusions of worldly existence. Just as the children in the house are unaware of the fire, human beings remain distracted by their desires, attachments, and ignorance, failing to see the reality of their condition. The father represents the Buddha. He uses skillful means, upaya, to lead his children to safety. Rather than forcing them to accept the truth directly, he speaks in a way they understand, guiding them toward liberation through their own willingness. The promised carts represent lesser paths. In Buddhist interpretation, the different carts symbolize various paths of practice, such as those of the Sravakas, disciples, Pratyabuddhas, solitary Buddhas, and Bodhisattvas, those who aspire to full enlightenment. These paths initially motivate practitioners, but ultimately, they lead to the supreme vehicle, the path of full awakening. The jewel-encrusted chariot represents the ultimate truth. The final gift represents the highest realization of Buddhahood, transcending worldly desires and leading to complete liberation from suffering. This parable emphasizes the importance of wisdom, compassion, and adaptability in guiding others toward enlightenment. The Buddha does not force beings to see the truth, but rather uses methods suited to their capacities, leading them gradually toward the ultimate realization of nirvana. 4. The Simile of the Raft. One of the Buddha's most practical and insightful parables is the simile of the raft, which he used to illustrate the temporary and instrumental nature of his teachings. The Buddha described a man who comes across a river. On his side of the river, there is danger and suffering, while on the far side, there is safety and liberation. The river itself is filled with strong currents, preventing an easy crossing. To reach the other shore, the man gathers wood, vines, and branches to build a raft. With great effort, he paddles himself across the river and reaches safety. Once on the far shore, he considers what to do with the raft. Should he carry it on his back as he continues his journey, thinking it might be useful in the future? The Buddha explains that just as the raft was useful for crossing the river but is no longer needed once the journey continues, so too must one eventually let go of the Buddha's teachings after reaching enlightenment. The river represents samsara. The dangerous waters symbolize the cycle of birth, death, and suffering that all beings must cross. The far shore represents nirvana, liberation, and peace await those who make the journey. The raft represents the Dharma, Buddhist teachings. The Buddha's teachings help us navigate the difficulties of life, but they are a means to an end, not an object of attachment. Letting go of the raft symbolizes non-attachment. Clinging even to wisdom can become an obstacle. Once one reaches enlightenment, they must let go of fixed views and doctrines. This parable teaches us to view spiritual teachings as tools rather than ultimate truths. Many people become attached to religious dogma or specific practices, failing to see that they are stepping stones rather than final destinations. In everyday life, this parable encourages us to be adaptable and to recognize that what serves us at one stage of our journey may not be needed at another. The path to wisdom requires continual growth and the willingness to release attachments, even to cherished beliefs, when they no longer serve our highest understanding. Through this simile, the Buddha reminds us that the journey to enlightenment requires wisdom, discernment, and ultimately, the ability to let go. 5. The Monkey Trap. The monkey trap is a simple yet profound parable that illustrates the dangers of attachment and how clinging leads to suffering. In certain regions, hunters use a clever method to catch monkeys. They take a coconut or a hollowed-out gourd, make a small hole just big enough for a monkey's hand to fit through, and place a piece of fruit or a treat inside. When the monkey reaches in and grabs the food, its fist becomes too large to pull out. Trapped by its own unwillingness to let go, the monkey remains stuck, making it easy for hunters to capture it. Attachment leads to suffering. The monkey could easily escape if it simply let go, but its greed prevents it from doing so. Similarly, humans become trapped by their desires, unwilling to relinquish attachments that cause suffering. Clinging prevents freedom. Just as the monkey remains stuck due to its grip, people cling to material possessions, relationships, beliefs, and emotions that hinder their ability to experience peace. Letting go is the path to liberation. The Buddha taught that by releasing our attachments, whether to wealth, pride, anger, or even fixed views, we can free ourselves from suffering. This parable is especially relevant in today's world, where many struggle with attachment to status, wealth, relationships, and social validation. The more we grasp at things, the more we suffer. The lesson of the monkey trap is a call to practice non-attachment, mindfulness, and inner freedom. By learning to let go of what no longer serves us, we can move beyond self-imposed limitations and experience true liberation, just as the Buddha taught. Each of these stories reflects an essential aspect of the Buddha's wisdom. The blind man and the elephant reminds us to stay open-minded and recognize the limits of our perceptions. The poisoned arrow emphasizes the importance of focusing on the practical path to liberation rather than being distracted by intellectual speculation. The burning house teaches that the world is impermanent and full of suffering, urging us to seek liberation before it's too late. The raft highlights that even the most useful teachings must be let go of when they have served their purpose. The monkey trap shows how attachment binds us to suffering, and only by letting go can we attain true freedom. Through these stories, the Buddha conveyed deep truths about existence in a way that was relatable and transformative. Rather than engaging in endless philosophical debates, he offered practical wisdom that could be directly applied to one's life. His emphasis was always on liberation from suffering, not through belief, but through insight, ethical conduct, and mindfulness. By reflecting on these parables, we can gain deeper clarity on the nature of reality and apply the Buddha's teachings to our daily lives. Instead of asking what the universe is, the Buddha urged us to ask how we can free ourselves from suffering, a question far more relevant to our personal journey toward wisdom and peace. The Buddha's teachings offer a way to transcend the endless debates over worldviews by shifting our focus to direct experience and personal transformation. Rather than engaging in arguments over whether the universe is purely material or infused with supernatural elements, he urged practitioners to examine their own minds, behaviors, and relationships with reality. At the heart of his teachings is the understanding that clinging to rigid beliefs, whether scientific or mystical, can itself be a source of suffering. Instead of searching for ultimate answers in cosmology, we can apply the Buddha's insights to cultivate wisdom, ethical conduct, and inner peace in our daily lives. Here's how we can practically transcend the worldview debate. Prioritize self-transformation over intellectual debate. Instead of fixating on whether a certain view is absolutely true, we can focus on how our thoughts and beliefs impact our well-being and ethical behavior. Practice mindfulness and inquiry. By observing our own experiences through meditation and mindful reflection, we can gain insights that are not bound by conceptual frameworks. Adopt a flexible mindset. The Buddha encouraged a pragmatic approach, treating beliefs as tools for alleviating suffering rather than as absolute doctrines. Live according to ethical principles, regardless of one's perspective on the universe. The Eightfold Path provides a moral and intellectual framework that leads to greater happiness and liberation. By following these principles, we move beyond theoretical disputes and instead engage in practices that cultivate true freedom, clarity, and peace. This shift from debate to action aligns with the very essence of the Buddha's teachings, which emphasize direct experience and liberation rather than dogmatic adherence to any particular view. In the end, transcending the worldview debate means recognizing that no single perspective holds the ultimate truth, but that our actions, mindfulness, and wisdom determine our experience of the world. This realization brings us closer to the Buddha's ultimate goal, the cessation of suffering and the realization of true inner peace. The Buddha's teachings hold a profound lesson for modern seekers. Instead of fixating on whether the universe has a creator, whether it began at a certain point, or whether supernatural beings exist, he encouraged us to shift our focus to our own experiences, actions, and the cultivation of wisdom. The practical takeaway is clear: we do not need absolute certainty about the cosmos to live a meaningful life. Whether one leans toward a scientific perspective or a more spiritual worldview, the central task remains the same: overcoming suffering and cultivating compassion, mindfulness, and inner peace. By applying the Four Noble Truths and following the Eightfold Path, we can move beyond theoretical disputes and focus on what truly matters: our ethical actions, our thoughts, and our ability to develop wisdom and compassion. The real question is not whether the universe was created, but how we can awaken from ignorance and suffering to attain lasting peace. In the end, the Buddha's wisdom invites us to go beyond intellectual speculation and instead embark on a personal journey of transformation. By letting go of attachment to fixed views and embracing an open, inquisitive mind, we align ourselves with the very essence of the Buddha's teachings, a path not of dogma, but of direct experience and inner realization.